Okay, so set up assignment 9 in your notebook. It's 5.3, growth of the president or growth of presidential power. And it's going to sound a lot like the notes we just did in terms of similar themes. All right. I think that we know this. There's a test question. I think what was designed by the founders, what did they think would be the dominant branch? They thought Congress would be the dominant branch. If you don't have that memorized, you can write it down. If you do have it memorized, you're good. But presidential power seemed like it was destined to happen naturally. And this whole slide, or maybe not this whole slide, but right here is basically saying the president is one person and Congress is 535 people. I'll give you a hint. When there's controversy, the president, they have to talk about it and they have to address it to the media. But like our local congressperson, Ken Calvert, sometimes I go weeks without seeing him tweet or seeing him in the news. So it's just way more likely the president is going to dominate, like media, for instance. So maybe, if you haven't written anything yet, maybe your first note could be the president dominates media because he or she is one person versus, Congress is 500 people. The president dominates the media. Bonus points to the scholar that can tell me, what's the phrase we use for like APGov FRQs about president dominating the media? Electronic throne. Also, a synonym is kind of like the bully pulpit, the ability to use the media. And then this is something I kind of mentioned earlier about like Andrew Jackson and stuff, that sometimes we just have strong personalities who become president, and they can have a great impact because they have strong personalities, like Jackson, like Lyndon Johnson, like Donald Trump, like Teddy Roosevelt. If you're like Teddy Roosevelt in Congress, you have less of an impact. You're Teddy Roosevelt as president, you can have a huge impact. All right, I'm going to click past. This is a key point of what we're going to talk about today, is that, would you agree that America is a much more complex place than it was 200 years ago? Yeah? Like they didn't know about pollution and climate change and mercury and the things in the water that'll make you sick and meat packing. You probably learned in U.S. history about how gross meat packing used to be. And as we have become more technologically advanced, we've had like more problems that we need to solve. The government needs to be involved in the internet. It needs to be involved in labor. It needs to be involved in airplanes. It needs to be involved in banking and pollution. And so basically the gist of it is, as we have become more complex as a society, presidential power has grown because they have to kind of regulate these things. Anytime you hear in this class the government doing something, it's the federal government. It's the executive branch. The president is more powerful. So the executive branch has grown because America is a complex place today. Can you write down, like, this is might be the most important slide today, so definitely write down some examples too, like pollution and air travel and banking. If you can think of almost anything, the federal government is probably involved in it now. Tobacco, guns, explosions, explosives, how many miles per gallon your car gets. These are not things that George Washington's time that they had to worry about. In George Washington's time, it was the post office and the army. So make sure you know, why has presidential power increased? Because we live in a complex society that needs a lot of rules and regulations. We got 16-year-olds driving cars. We need rules. We need airbags. We need all kinds of regulations. Okay? So this has led to the executive branch growing. I'm going to click, yeah? I just think this is cool. These are pictures of the president when they entered office and the last picture when they left office. He wasn't even president for 8 years. He was assassinated. Look how much he aged. He became ghostly Of course, he had like the Civil War to deal with. That's got to be like the number one stressor. This is backwards. This is early and this is later. Today he's really got white hair, huh? He's looking older now. He was at Trump's inauguration. He's aged. He looks like his dad now. Similar. Although today he looks quite different. He's become vegan. He's very thin and he looks sickly, to be honest with you. Franklin. That's the last picture of him. He looks like he's about to die. I mean, this is probably like just a few weeks before he did die. Vietnam War. Although he looks a lot the same, right? Slightly lighter hair. Okay, I just wrote this on the board. So possibly, if you already have it written and the ink is still wet, you might be able to skip this part. Congress often writes broadly worded laws and lets the executive agencies fill in the holes. But what we do have here is a brand new second bullet, and you should write that down. Congress often bows to the president in times of crisis. So with like COVID, we look to the president for how to deal with COVID. With the housing collapse in 2008, we watched that movie Game Change, and like that was happening during the movie. They looked to the president for how to handle it. Ukraine, we look to the president for how to handle it. Israel, Palestine. The third bullet can be shortened to just like a president has more power if they win an election dramatically, like in a big way. You know, the president has more power if they win big in an election because Congress feels like, well, the people want this, so we're going to do what he wants. Please don't be the person writing every word up there. Here's another thing about bullet number 1, and again, I emphasize this because I can picture like one of the classes will have an FRQ related to this, okay? But like, if you're Congress and you're hearing reports that like the water supply in America is bad, or there's like lead in the gasoline and it's making people sick, and you're thinking to yourself, well, I don't know how much lead is safe, like I'm not an expert, and even if I have lobbyists come down, it's like too much work. I'm not gonna like write a law that it must be below this many parts per million. So instead what I'll do is I'll just create a law that says the president can deal with keeping our water safe, and he can hire the experts, and they can go work for the government, and they can make sure that our water supply is safe and not making us sick. So it's a little bit of Congress's laziness, but also it's we need something in our government to regulate stuff, and we want to hire experts, and it's like we'll just have the president can do that. Okay, that increases presidential power. Okay, the media is a huge way that presidential power has increased. Think about our very first presidents. What media would they have used? Maybe like the only one I can think of is newspaper. Our very first presidents. Is there any other media I'm forgetting? That might be it, yeah. And then with the invention of the radio, who's our radio president? Earlier. But that was JFK's the transition away from radio. FDR, yeah. I think we should write down some examples. This might be FRQ territory too, like how does the president use the media? So I would write down FDR, like the Great Depression president, he was the radio president. And you know, we're simple human beings. If a technology is new, it can be pretty mystical. And so people had FDR talking to them in their living room, and it was like magic. They felt like he was like a family member. They were really connected with him. Like people loved the hell out of him. So write down FDR, radio. You can put 1940s, 1930s, 1940s. And then we're going to have a president that transitions us to the television. Some people think he's our most handsome president because of the television. Who is that president? JFK. So you can write down JFK. There's a funny story about JFK and the TV. Have you heard this story? He had a debate, a presidential debate to, who will be the president, him versus Nixon. And I know Nixon would be president, but Nixon's going to lose in this election. And Nixon, on the radio, people who listened said Nixon did better in the debate. But if you watched on TV and you were distracted just by the whole vibe and the confidence, Nixon was sweaty, JFK was young, and he was kind of hot. He was attractive. And if you watch on TV, you thought JFK won. And so it's kind of like, it shows also the difference. Our media, now you got to be kind of like TV smart, And then, who's our first, internet president? Probably Barack Obama. I mean, before that, the internet existed, but most people were not on it. Who's our first Twitter president? Oh, that's Donald Trump. Although, how culturally important is Twitter anymore, I don't know. There's a big movement right on to stop using Twitter. Have you seen this? It was all over Reddit yesterday, we're no longer no more posting Twitter links. I think the Sig Heil Nazi salute was too far for a lot of people, so. I don't know if you even know what I'm talking about. Okay. And the president, just realize the president can utilize television so much to connect with the American people. If there's a major school shooting, Obama would go on TV and talk about it. If he wants to build the wall and he wants to brag about it, Trump would go on TV and talk about it. I think that this is repetition from the last notes, but let's read it. The emergence of the U.S. as the great superpower after World War II has also led to presidential power increasing. This is obvious. I think you know this, but we are the most powerful country on earth. And so to be the president of the most powerful country on earth really makes you the most powerful person on earth. And we have been this way since essentially World War II. You can write down, U.S. most powerful country since World War II. About 80 years as the most powerful country on earth so far. Almost done. The next slide you might not be writing. It's just general things. I've taught you this before, but if I'm a president for 8 years, when am I going to get most of my stuff accomplished? First 2. And that way Trump is lucky. He's getting 2 first terms. You know what I mean? 2 times he's going to have full Republican control. So it's kind of nice for him. But Biden, he could only get stuff done in the first 2 years. So if you don't have that memorized, make sure you know presidents got to get stuff done typically in the first 2 years, because they're also going to become less and less popular. They're going to lose the midterm election probably. This says avoid the details. Don't try to get too specific with how you're going to do stuff. I think Trump's good at that. He doesn't try to get into detailed conversation. He's just we're going to build a wall and Mexico's going to pay for it. And it's well, how's Mexico going to pay for it? Don't worry about it. He's not going to answer you, okay? And then you kind of have to decide who you're going to trust when you're president, your cabinet or your White House staff. Your homework is an online lecture where you look at who works with the president. There are 2 groups of people. Look at my hands. There's the cabinet. They're part of that pyramid, like Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense. And then there's the people you probably really trust. And those are your White House staff. And they're with you every minute of every day. And Trump doesn't type his tweets. I saw it actually. Saw it on video the other day. He's reading to a girl who is typing it for him. These are his most trusted advisors that he surrounded himself with. These are his White House staff. I think we're done, but let me click. Oh, this just shows presidential approval over time. How much do the American people like a president over time? Look at Truman, poor guy. He entered at 90%. He left at 30. That's a big gap. Eisenhower did pretty good the whole way. Kennedy, that's not fair. He died. You didn't get a little boost from that? I guess they stop counting when you die. Johnson in the Vietnam War. Nixon and the Watergate scandal. That's the worst number on here, I think. At least it's the worst that you left. George W. Bush, the war in Iraq. This is 9/11 right here, guys. Look at 9/11. You see how crisis can make a president more popular, too. That's why there's all the memes like Bush did 9/11. I do not believe that, but that's why the conspiracy exists, because it makes the president more powerful, more popular when we have When we have a foreign enemy, maybe not like a crisis, like a banking crisis. Oh, and this is Trump's approval rating. He just was low the whole time. there's just 37% of this country that likes Donald Trump a lot, and they're just always going to like Donald Trump a lot, and it doesn't really waver. And in the background, you see everyone else is kind of all over the place. And that is the end of those notes. Have a nice day.